something to say, there's something to say.
Guys, how's it going? Our House 21 here, and if you are like me, then you are a super geek. And what that means is that when you get a new airplane like this UMX A-10, instead of just getting it out and throwing a battery in it and mating it like most normal people, you hook up all your electronics to make sure that you have properly calibrated the voltage and current sensors on board so that you get the correct data on your radio. So when I do things like this, I know from looking at my Venom voltage meter right here and my onboard watt meter that the data that I'm getting on the radio through telemetry is trustworthy, and that I can bet the life of the airplane on the data that I'm getting, so I know when to land or when I can still keep flying. Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Our House 21 and time for a quick unboxing. Although this unboxing might not be quick. I should stop saying that because you guys know by now. Most of my videos aren't that quick, but that's all right because I try to get you guys information. And for those who don't know, RC Physics, this is the channel, is all about explaining the science and the physics behind our favorite hobbies. So in this case, I'm going to be, as the background shows, talking a little bit about my newest acquisition, which is an aircraft. I do speed runs, getting into crawlers right now, bashers, all sorts of interesting RC, but by profession I'm an aerospace engineer, so lately I've been getting a lot more into airplanes, and that actually brings us to what this guy is right here. So for those who've been watching on my social media, you've seen that I recently teased that I was looking to pick up a new UMX plane. The reason for that is that in the past couple of years I've actually ended up acquiring a lot of new aircraft, and most of them are big, like ranging between 1.1 to 1.5 meter wingspan. I mean, that's not huge, but they're large enough where I can't just pick up and fly them down at the local baseball field or behind the elementary school up the street. So I have to put a lot more planning and forethought, actually going to one of my local flying fields or a couple specific fields that I know are large enough that I can fly in. So I wanted to get something that was small enough that I could just grab it and just throw it in the car and fly before or after work, so I can get a little bit more stick time to get a little bit more practice. I have a little Eachine slash Volantix F22, which is an awesome little plane. It's a little Ultra-Micro as well, and I'll splice in a picture of it here in just a second. But it's a cool little airplane, but the problem is that it's only a three channel aircraft, whereas this right here and a lot of the new Horizon or I should say E-flite Ultra-Micros actually have 4 fully featured channels, and on top of that they've got some really nice electronics. So, but that's a good thing and a bad thing, and I'll get to that in a second. So first off, here is the plane I decided to go. What I was looking at were the UMX Ultrix, which is, as the name implies, it's a trick plane, you know, and it's a really cool, really capable aircraft. And I might still end up picking up one of those, honestly. But the problem with that plane is that it doesn't really fly like a larger airplane. The other two airplanes I was looking for, of course, were this one right here, this A-10, and the Cessna Citation Latitude, which is a really cool swept-back wing, really fast plane. And both of them, this A-10 and the Cessna, have the same power plant. They both have two 30mm brushless EDFs, which makes them have great power, great controllability, and everything. But the reason I ended up deciding to go with this one was because this is it's a powerful straight wing airplane. And sparing you all the math, a straight wing aircraft generally has better low speed performance than a swept back wing aircraft. It's just how the physics work in it. So with the A-10, putting on my aerospace engineer hat, I should be able to fly this slower, which means I should be able to fly this in more flying fields than the Citation, even though that is a really cool looking plane. But that brings us to the second box here. So as cool as these planes are right now, Horizon is doing something which a lot of you guys are aware of. And if you watch any of the unboxings on the larger YouTube channels where they're pulling out all the new Horizon Hobby aircraft, you'll see that they're really pushing their smart batteries. And there's nothing wrong with their smart batteries, except for the fact that they lock you into the Horizon Hobby slash Spectrum ecosystem. And for a lot of us who's been around the hobby for a long time, I have my chargers, I have my batteries. I don't want to have to buy a whole new set of hardware just to fly a really cool airplane. So that's where my sponsor Venom comes in. So gotta have the decals. I've been corrected, they're not stickers, they're decals. But these right here are 800 milliamp hour 3-cell lithium polymer batteries. Now these come with the JST connectors on them. These right here are a great drop-in, and I'm going to check that here in just a second, but they should be a great drop-in for this airplane because they recommend an 850 milliamp hour Spectrum battery, but it's a smart battery. So they use their EC2 connector, and again, nothing wrong with that connector. It's basically an XT30 with an extra sensor wire in there to talk to the electronics, but those batteries don't come with a balance lead. So someone like me who's already got tons of chargers and tons of capability for all that, I can't use those batteries, period. I have to buy the new batteries and new chargers, which just, honestly, to someone like me, is offensive. I'll just say it like that. It is offensive because it basically locks me out of cool aircraft or cool things that I can't fly for no good reason. Okay, so I'll get off that rant. But these right here will solve the problem. This was a 2-pack. They're available on Venom Power's website. 2-pack of batteries for $39. So they're actually slightly cheaper than the Horizon Hobby batteries. That 50 amp hour difference, I wouldn't be too concerned about that because, well, number one, in the real world, you're probably not going to see that difference. And honestly, for a good high C battery, I'll say that for a second, but the short version is, if you've got a good high C battery, these are 30C, so they're not like tremendously high C battery, but you get less voltage sag. So for a good battery with a good C rating that's actually lives up to a C rating, you'll get less voltage sag during your flight or during your driving, because this applies to ground and air as well. But anytime you're pulling a lot of current, you're going to have less voltage sag, which means that you'll be able to get more usable life out of your battery. So for those of you who are flying by timer, you might not see a difference. But for me, since I'm going to be using my Radiomaster TX16, which can take advantage of the telemetry that is built into these airplanes, I should be able to see my battery in real time and make a good decision of when I want to land based upon how I've actually been flying. So that's pretty cool stuff. So enough about the batteries, let's look at the airplane. So one of the really cool things about these models is the fact that they actually come fully assembled. So before I jump into that, let's look at the box. Okay, as you can see, we've got AS3X, so it's got 3-axis stabilization. They have SAFE, which is basically it's the easy button for flying. For those who aren't familiar, Horizon Hobby's been doing this a long time with most of their models, where you have basically the receiver has a built-in flight controller. That's really what's going on there, and they're able to integrate active stabilization. So the cool thing about that is that with this AS3X, they're able to actually take out a lot of the rapid random motions that you usually get on a small airplane, and it can make a small airplane fly like a big plane. And that's really important for what I wanted to do, because a lot of the small micro airplanes, they don't fly like big planes because they're being blown around in the wind all the time, and they're stressful. A lot of times it's harder to fly a small airplane than it is to fly a large airplane, because the large airplane has enough mass where it just smooths everything out. With AS3X technology, you know, it actually will go through and it will filter out a lot of those sudden jittery motions that you have to do that by hand. It just makes the plane easier to fly. Okay, so, and again, that's for an experienced pilot. You might say, I don't want that, but for someone who's just getting into the hobby, or even an intermediate pilot, that's a good thing, because it can make a small plane fly like a larger plane, which means that you can more easily translate your skills from the smaller planes to the large planes. And the really cool thing is with flying with a good radio like my Radiomaster, and like I said, Horizon tries to lock you into the Spectrum ecosystem, and they've got some really nice radios over there, just to be honest. They just cost several times more than my radio, but you can set up the same control layout on this small plane that you have on the big plane. And that means that you can basically build up your muscle memory, and you'll know for a fact that all the skills that you've developed, or all of the techniques you've developed and everything you've trained yourself to do on the small plane will work on a larger plane. So that's just really nice. So that's what AS3X is all about. And with safe, you can essentially flip a switch, and that is kind of a beginner mode. And what that does is it actually limits the roll angles and the pitch angles. So basically it cuts some of the performance of the airplane. It turns it into essentially trainer mode. But that is nice sometimes, because if you get yourself into a situation where you like lose orientation, or you feel like you might be in trouble, you can hit this, drop it in safe, and the plane will autocorrect, and it could save your plane. Or if you want to teach someone how to fly and you don't want to worry so much about them doing something and getting it over their head, Safe Select will help you out. So, all right, back to other things about the plane. I think I pretty much talked about most of it. It's compatible with 2S and 3S batteries, which is cool. I'm going to be flying on a 3S. It supports this is a bind and fly model, so you can just set it up to work with any of the Spectrum compatible radios. So all the OpenTX radios support the Spectrum formats as well, so that's good. This plane is actually less than 250 grams fully loaded. As you can see right here, it's only 4.6 ounces, 1.3 grams. I'm sorry, 131 grams without the batteries. You throw in the batteries, you're still under the 250 gram limit, which is kind of cool. It's got removable landing gear, and it's actually got a reinforced airframe. Apparently that's a big deal, because the previous version of this airplane apparently was made out of glass. Not literally, but from an operational standpoint, apparently a lot of people broke these things in half on crashes. So they listened and they reinforced them. So let's go ahead, pull it out of the box, and you can see it comes with the landing gear fully installed. And as it said, it has a fully steerable nose gear. So, and it comes fully assembled, so there's really not much to do here. So if you're flying their battery, thank you, Kyle. My son Kyle just popped up. He's helpful. So if you are flying the Spectrum batteries and you have everything in their ecosystem, you could literally just throw in the battery and then be off on your merry way. But like I said, because I am difficult, meaning I'm experienced in the hobby and I already have my own hardware, then I can't do that. So these EC2, like right now, since we're still in the middle of a global pandemic, people can't buy the batteries. Well, sorry, they can buy the batteries, they can't buy the adapters to convert the batteries to different things. So like I said, a lot of people who are getting these aircraft or want to get these aircraft are kind of up the creek. So another reason why I decided to go ahead and get my Venoms. So just proving the point, perfect fit, and I could put the little Velcro in, get my CG at just about the right point. I believe I need to double check the manual, but the CG should be here right around this point. So it's a little nose heavy right here. Yeah, squeeze that guy back. There we go. So should balance right about right. So this should be good. Hey everybody, it's OurHouse21 here, and I'm doing another little experiment. So what I've got going on here in my video is my brand new UMX A-10. So I've got this guy all paired up to my, oh, I didn't even realize I had this little guy in here. Okay, so I've got this guy paired up to my Radiomaster radio, which is cool. And it is all set to go. Got my XT60 connectors wired up to it. And yes, I know these connectors are serious overkill for this application, but pretty much all my batteries, I have two connector sizes. I use, well, three connector sizes. I either use Castle 8mm, Castle 6.5mm, or XT60s. So I could have gone with an XT30, but I just figure it's good to just have common connectors, because then I can do things like this. So this right here is my little watt meter. So the point of today's experiment is I have this nice little A-10 with, okay, not the radio's done talking to me. So I've got my radio set up to receive telemetry from the airplane. One of the nice things about the new Horizon Hobby planes, especially like the UMXs, is that the receivers actually have a full telemetry suite that comes down, which includes motor RPM, motor current, temperature of the ESC, temperature of the BEC, and current draw. So I have my radio over here set up to receive all this information. Let's see if I can focus in. So I can receive all the information here. So you can see I've got temperature. This here is the main voltage. This is the RPM of the fans. This, what it actually does is it's set up to report individual cell voltage. So they cheat. What they do is they have the overall voltage and they divide by 3 to give you cell voltage. So here I have the real-time cell voltage, and this is the minimum cell voltage. And similarly here, this is the real-time current on the bottom, and this is the maximum current. So what I'm doing right here is I want to make sure that the numbers that I'm reading on the telemetry stream are actually matching the numbers that are coming. Basically, I want to calibrate this to make sure that I'm getting real numbers. So that's why I have my little power meter. So let me go ahead and plug this guy up to the battery so you can see that it's alive. So this power meter has been in a lot of my content in the past. So here we go. I have to take it and have to change it to channel 2 because it can actually read, okay, which is the button. That's the channel. There we go. So I have to change this thing to channel 2. So as you can see, I've got a full battery. This is at 12.5 volts. And if I plug this connector right here into the airplane, then I will be able to see the real information. And I probably should have thought this through better. That should be over here so that I can get a better view of what's going on. So let's swap these guys around. Okay. Here we go. All right, so I got this. So now let's fire this up. And let's read some data. All right, so now, we're going to be, we got data going up to yin yang right now. So right here, I've got my Venom battery meter here, and I'm reading 4.17 volts on the actual per cell. Let's see if I can get that on camera. So if we have 4.17 volts, okay, and a total voltage of 12.5. Down here, I've got on the meter total voltage of 12.46. It's coming a little small, but I can't really pick it up to get a better view on the camera. And over here on the radio, so I have a voltage on the radio of 12.5 volts and 4.16 volts for each of the cells. So yay verily, it looks like the voltage data is all good. All right, so I've confirmed part of the equation. So now I'm going to ramp up and go to partial throttle. So I'm going to disarm the radio, or I should say arm the radio. And now I'm actually going to go ahead and give this guy a little bit of juice. I'm going to take it to a low current level. So I'm going to raise it up to just pulling a couple of amps. And then I'm going to see if that reading relates to over here. So I actually have two things I'm doing. I'm trying to get an idea of how much sag I'm getting under load, because my Venom Pro Touch charger, I've already measured this battery as having about 25 milliohms per cell. So I should be able to calculate reliably what the voltage sag of this battery is. So once I give it a little bit of load, I'm going to double check what my cells are dropping to, and I'm going to double check what the current is, and then that's going to be able to help me verify the measurement that I got. All right, so at that, let's go ahead and fire the sucker up. Okay. All right. So I confirmed that I got a maximum of 5.3 amps showing on telemetry. On the voltage sensor or the watt meter, I had a maximum of 5.4 amps. So I'm within a tenth of an amp. Hold on, Nathan.
That plays sounds loud.
Yes, it does. The minimal voltage I'm reading is 11.39 volts. On the radio, my minimal voltage, actually it recorded by cell, is 3.76 per cell. If I multiply that by 3, that comes out to be about 11.2. So that is 11.2, 11.3, so that's about right as well. Current cell voltage is reading at 4. Let's see if I can actually get this on screen so you can see it. So current cell voltage is reading at 4.1 volts, and per cell 12.04. On the meter over here is reading 12 even, and individual cell voltage, this is reading 4 points even, or 4 volts even. So that's basically the data looks like it's pretty consistent. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and crank it. So I'm going to take a measurement of what the maximum current draw that I can get is. Now, interesting thing, I'm looking here at the telemetry, and I think this is the BEC temp. So let me go ahead and go back into my telemetry screen here. So I think I may have accidentally deleted the ESC temperature. So let me go ahead. And those who aren't familiar with OpenTX, I can actually go in and I can read all the telemetry sensors. So I'm going to go here, add a sensor. So I'm going to discover new sensors. So I see the list of 32 sensors. Okay, so I got that. And let's go up and take a look, see if I see another temperature. No, it's supposed to be telling me ESC temperature, but I don't see it. So maybe it's one of, like this right here that doesn't have a name, just a numerical value. This right here looks like it's probably a BEC voltage. Not sure what that voltage is. All right, so okay, so this is obviously cell voltage. So there's something, so I'm not getting that temperature, or else it's mislabeled. All right, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Let's go ahead and back out of here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and crank this up to the maximum and measure what the overall current draw is. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to double check the ESC is down here. I just want to make sure I don't overheat anything. And so far everything feels okay. So you got to be careful doing this type of test with no cooling because you're not getting any air over the ESC. So you could actually overheat things and bad things. Given the fact that it's supposed to have a temperature sensor on board, it should go into thermal protection if it overheats itself. So I'm not too worried about that, but just be aware if you're going to do a test like this that you need to be protective so you don't overheat things. All right, so simple procedure. Just going to ramp this guy up and then read off the currents and the voltages just to make sure that I still get consistent at the high end. All right, 3, 2, 1. Well, guys, a considerable amount of time has jumped by, and I have to say, I still like this plane. So, but there's some issues that we have to talk about. First off is the fact that this plane, even though I'm sure it is more robust than the original version, unfortunately it's still kind of made of glass. In the time that I've had this plane, I've actually snapped the nose off twice. The first time was something really simple. I did a hand launch, but it was a bad hand launch, and it just went up, went right down, and just snapped. The second time it went up again, and this time I just came in for a landing a little bit hot, and it hit the nose, and the nose just collapsed. I have videos that I'll be posting soon talking about the full extent of the damage that the plane suffered and what I did to repair it. But the bottom line was that, you know, with a little bit more reinforcement, I think that the plane would be rock solid. But you know, it's kind of hard for me to fully recommend this one based upon my experience with it. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that this was a great flying plane. I thoroughly enjoy flying it. However, the fact that with not that hard of landings, you know, and again, this was in the tall grass, but you can't always control the grass in the fields that you fly at. I mean, and this is advertised as a plane that's made for flying in tight spaces. So you're not necessarily going to always be flying these at AMA fields with golf course grass and, you know, perfectly manicured and everything. This is meant to fly in the real world. So, you know, coming down with a perfectly smooth glide path that just happens to get snagged on some grass and having the entire front of the plane explode, that's not a good day, you know. And botching your hand launch and just coming in a little bit hard, bam, which, you know, is that happens to the most experienced pilots, that shouldn't ruin your day either. So effectively what I did to bring this plane back to life, I ended up adding some significant reinforcements in here, and those reinforcements being carbon fiber spars and good old-fashioned toothpicks, and then I fully laminated the plane. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the process of laminating an RC plane, check out the video that I'm linking here where I laminated my E-flite Convergent 650. It's an evolved process. It's not necessarily something that you want to do with every airplane you own or any airplane you own, but some planes just kind of need it, you know. And in this case, I think that this plane needed it. Now, after I laminated it, it is significantly stronger, and that is because the laminating process basically acts like a reinforcement skin that just goes over the entire airframe, and it basically pre-tensions the structure. And without going into an engineering thesis, basically it's like taking a skin of super strong material and wrapping it around the entire aircraft. So if anything tries to flex, that skin pulls it back in line. So basically it turbocharges the structure in a way that it just keeps it from bending as much, which makes it a whole lot more rigid. And as a result, everything is just a lot more stiff and a lot stronger. So as you see right now, I can do this with the airframe. I would never have dared to try to do this with the airframe before it was reinforced. And let's see if I can get here closely. You can see this is the snap line, the first snap line right here, where it's funny, there's actually a reinforcement that's inside the structure that ends right about at that point. So it just snapped right where the reinforcement ends. And there's another one, a stock one, that goes along here. So basically there's an overlap point where the two don't join, and that's the weak spot, and that's exactly where it snapped off. So that was fixed. And then this right here, because basically the entire front end exploded, I had to use my good friend white Gorilla Glue to go in and fill in a lot of the gaps that happened. And then using the laminating film, just went through and pulled it all back together. Now, as a result, I've got something that, like I said, is much stronger than the original, but you know, it doesn't quite look, well, I mean, I don't think it looks bad, but you know, A-10s aren't necessarily supposed to have a shiny gloss to them, but it flies. So that's all that I guess really matters in it. So overall, I like the plane. I like what the plane was supposed to do, and it still serves my purposes. But I can see a lot of guys getting into trouble with this plane just because of the fact that, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot to have a bad day. Now, the good thing is E-flite / Horizon Hobby does sell replacement airframe structures. You can get all the replacement parts, so you can rebuild this plane over and over and over again. So if you do have a bad day, you're not completely up the creek. But I mean, the way I look at it is, it wouldn't have taken a whole lot more to just add some of the extra reinforcements that I did from the factory. You know, I mean, because basically just having the extra spars going through here to join this section, make it stronger, and then the extra carbon fiber to just reinforce. So basically, if you look at it right here, the way that the plane is built, it has two halves, an upper and a lower. The lower half has a carbon fiber reinforcement that's in here. The top is pretty much loose, so it doesn't have any reinforcement. So I was able to put in carbon to go all the way through this side here, along the two sides, to reinforce this. And that greatly increases the strength of the front. So it's not just relying on the strength of the bottom piece anymore. So, because especially what happened with the one crash is you got the battery, all the weight of the battery that's up here, when it impacted, the weight of the battery just ripped and it basically accordioned this whole thing. And basically it ripped this part just completely off, and then just obliterated everything, and the whole thing collapsed. So that's just one of the things that happens with this particular layout. Oh, and in that crash, the landing gear piece that sticks out here freed itself, and I have no idea where it went. It just got eaten by the grass. So I'm gonna have to 3D print a replacement if I decide that I ever want to fly with the landing gear again. But you know, that an E-flite does not sell that as a separate piece. In order to get it, I have to buy the entire fuselage. So fortunately, that's really easy to measure up and 3D print a new one. I just haven't bothered to do it yet because I actually like flying it without landing gear, because most of the places I fly, I'm not landing on hard surfaces. Okay, but overall, that's a mixed review on this plane. I think I'll give it a 6 out of 10 because I like its flying characteristics. I actually think it's a fun plane to fly around, but in a stock setup, you know, if you aren't really careful, you know, you're going to snap the nose off. It's going to happen to you. I was really careful. I was aware of the problems with the first generation plane, and I still snapped the nose off. So just something to keep in mind. If you want to buy it, just be prepared to do repairs or do your own upgrades, or do what I did and do the laminating. But is it a fun plane? Absolutely. Did I have a great time flying it? Absolutely. You'll see me posting my maiden flight and additional flight videos because I've got a lot of hours on this plane now. But would I recommend it as a first EDF? Definitely not. Would I recommend it as, you know, your primary EDF? Not without mods. So again, I like it, but it does have some issues, and I haven't flown the first generation, so I can't definitively say how much better this one is than the last one. But I can say that I snapped the nose off twice without major impacts. And I'm not the most experienced pilot in the world, but I'm not a noob either. So, all right. So I think that's enough for right now. Thank you guys for tuning in. This was a long one, but I hope you had a lot of useful information out of it. OurHouse21 signing out. Remember the mantra: fly, fix, fly, break it, fix, and do it all over again. And don't forget to check me out on Facebook, Instagram, RC Physics Sandbox, the Venom RC Lifestyle page, Castle Creations fan page. I'm all over the place. You can find me all over. Okay, guys. OurHouse21 signing out. Peace.